Okay, let's start. My presentation, as Kathleen introduced, is about designing a marketing experience for Volkswagen and using additional sensory input, in this case haptic and wind. My name is Thomas Bedenk. I'm a VR consultant and leading the VR efforts at Exozet in Berlin. We're a digital agency. We're bringing everything that is involved in digital transformation. We're consulting, we're creating the stuff, and we're helping it bring to market. And this is not our first VR experiences. We already did a couple for Volkswagen, Jochen Schweizer, other brands. And we're always trying to look at our clients, what can really help them, what is really fit to the medium of virtual reality. In this case, Audi Sports Marketing visited us because they heard about the other things we did in virtual reality, and the Berlin Formula E event was coming up. So we were thinking together with them, what could we do to bring the excitement of sport, but also the excitement of cars. Okay, Java update is not really necessary right now. That's the problem if you connect Wi-Fi before a presentation, then you get stuff like that. To the E-Village at this event. So that was at Tempelhof, a Flughafen in Berlin. And the cool thing is our offices, Exozet's offices, as you saw here, is right at Tempelhof Airport. We have a whole floor at this airport. And that's why we also did the VIP launch for Audi. And we started with this image of e-tron cars. That's what we had available to us at the moment, because Audi also didn't have this defined the strategy or the brand campaign for the new model, the Sportback concept, which this whole showcase was about. Let's look at the original briefing. We were supposed to do something with Formula E, with the new e-tron, first fully electric car from Audi. It should highlight acceleration, battery power, range, that it's silent. It should have an engaging story. No final campaign visual look was defined yet, but it should have an urban environment, action and sport, a touch of humor, not too futuristic. And we want to see the interior and the exterior. And by the way, the car data can only be delivered in the middle of the production. And we have 2 months to do it. So we couldn't change the 2 months, but we had to focus on some of those aspects, obviously, because that would have been a little too much at a time. And we talked with Jason from Sport Marketing, but we also, with Johannes from Sport Marketing from Audi, but also Jason, the marketing lead of Germany from Audi. And he has some really, he's responsible for some really cool, you should look at them, videos, the marketing since, I don't want to say something wrong, but 1.5 years, I think he's at Audi. And he did some really cool storytelling in there. But again, virtual reality is a new medium. It's not necessarily a TV ad. So luckily, when we met, we were both really quickly in an understanding that we have to approach it a little different. And because we're entering the age of experience where it's not just about showing something, but it's letting the user live through it and experience something, more like going on a hike compared to watching a pre or thought of plot. So pretty easily and with a lot of trust, we together decided, okay, let's focus on some things and skip the stuff that is just not doable in 2 months. So we, for once, decided that we don't do the interior anymore, but only exterior view. And we decided we don't do the urban environment, and we go into the Salt Lake area where they already do a lot of their marketing shots. And let's focus on, but let's keep the duality of e-tron and Formula E in it, because it was mainly for the one event. And the key feature we wanted to add to make this more exciting was the element of wind. So it's not that no one has done that before, but not a lot of people did VR experience with wind before. So it was a challenge on how to approach this. And I want to show you first the outcome. So you see part of the final experience now. So we know what I'm talking about. This was the setup in the e-village. Okay, so as you saw, we focused very much on the exterior. We focused on the car and the cars, and we kind of, that was the final thing, but we still were in the concept phase, so we had to think of what's going to happen in this scene, and we really wanted it to be interactive as well in real time and not just feel like a pre-rendered movie, because we were fully interactive, real-time 3D. So we wanted 3 elements in there. Cool moves of the car around the user when he's just standing there. We wanted to ride alongside the car, and we wanted to have different perspectives on the car and also the experience of height. So the question that comes to mind is, like, how much interactivity do we really need? And Jason, coming more from the video background and film background, said, don't overdo it with interactivity. We said we need interactivity to make you feel part of it. And it turned out in the end we were both right, because we wanted to do much interactivity, and I'll show you an example for that. And we work heavily with iterative development and rapid prototyping there. So this is a prototype that you're seeing here. And we worked with a system that was actually quite cool to use, but it would have taken too long for the user to understand and to play around with it. But in this step that we created, you were, and the interface isn't final and all that, but you were able to draw the path of the cars, and they would completely go along the path that you drew. So we had full AI, we had an animation based on physics, and the cars would do whatever the user wants. But the disadvantage here is that we realized pretty quickly it takes too long for the user to experience with it to really understand how cool it is. And there's a tendency that the cars are pretty far away, and we don't want to have tiny pixel cars, but we want them much closer. So we kind of steered away from that and made it a little more scripted, what's happening with the cars around you. On the way, we also experienced some cool stuff like this. So I showed you this. So, but that's the kind of stuff if you go approach it iteratively, you just experiment with stuff. Sometimes stuff like that happens, but it can also inspire you to do new things. In this case, it didn't really inspire us because we didn't want to destroy the car. Okay, let's look at what we did instead. Okay, first we start with the sensation of height. That's already starting the adrenaline going from the beginning for the user. And you also, from the start, has this completely real-time rendered interactive flag in your hand. So why a flag? Because we wanted an interaction of letting the car start, but we also wanted the direct association with being able to do something yourself and also with the wind. And the flag is actually animated from the same direction the wind is coming from. So the wind, we have different wind aspects. I'll go into that deeper later. But as you go down the platform, the wind starts really strongly, and as you go down on the platform, the wind becomes weaker over time. So together with this flag, it really gives you the impression that you're actually right there. Now, there was a question, of course. You saw the waving the flag at the end. Will the user understand waving the flag? And we were already thinking about animating like an outline of someone doing it. But in the end, we realized that 90% don't need any help. There are two cars standing right next to them. What do you do with a flag in the hand? And we established that right away so the user understood it. And for the few people that didn't understand it right away, there was still someone at the location to either help them, or we also did a smart thing there. We just gave them a controller, and they could just skip the scene manually in case, I don't know what's going on here with the sound, but they could skip the scene manually in case someone really didn't get that, waving the flag. Or some people that never watched a racing event, I guess, they did this with a flag, and you're supposed to do this. And we tried to make it already pretty easy to recognize. Okay, so another question is how much realism do you need with that? And realism comes in a lot of different aspects. First of all, the visual quality, but also the simulation aspects, and also remember the tower that you're standing on, and this is all we just imagined an Audi test track in the desert, but it doesn't make much sense if you think about it. Standing on this high tower, just looking down, there's not even something railing to hold on to, but we didn't care because it's not about a realistic environment of doing that, but to excite the people. And no one questioned afterwards, why was I standing on this 30-meter high tower in the beginning? No one even asked that question or considered it because it was just cool to be there. But on the other hand, visually, we needed to have the best quality possible. And this was a rendering, and remember, for the first couple of weeks, we didn't even have the car data yet, and the car wasn't revealed. So we had some background information, but we didn't know the exact final look of the car yet. And then we only got not a CAD version of the car, but a very high resolution mesh. This mesh was 1.9 gigabyte just for the mesh data. And it had 150 parts, individual parts, just for the exterior. And we had to recreate it in a quality level where it's still the same visual quality, but it works with virtual reality. So in this case, and it also is always case by case how you would do something like this. In this case, we manually re-topologized the whole exterior of the car, because that way we could get the best reflections, a lot better edge flow out of it, and it was a massive amount of work, though. And so we had to, while developing the application, we were also always working only with like half a car, because some parts were already done and others not. But it doesn't matter, because you can already flesh out all the interactivity and everything that's happening in this experience anyway. So this is what we ended up with, and it's pretty cool. And the first times the Audi people saw it, they were really impressed with how vivid this quality is and how good the quality is for virtual reality, and they couldn't wait to show it to their designers as well. And that's because we added the detail where necessary, but we left out the detail where it's not necessary. For example, the interior is a super simplified version of the interior because we don't see it, but we still see a driver in there, and we still see some of them to make it more realistic, because if you only have black windows, it doesn't look as realistic again. Now coming to this really, really important aspect, making wind work. So we planned on working with these machines, and there aren't actually a lot of options out there. In this case, it's a DMX interface, so what's usually used for lighting on stage, for example. And that's a protocol where this can be controlled, and it can be controlled in intensity. So you can, from a computer, live control the intensity. And our real-time software, depending on what the user did, controlled 3 of those wind machines. And one disadvantage of this specific one is that it is pretty strong and focused, but it doesn't spread wide. So we have to put it far away enough from the user to experience it, even if the user walks around. So that was actually pretty complicated, finding the right spots to put the wind machines. And if you remember, first we had an interactivity planned that you can completely independently choose where the car comes. So the car could drive by at any side, and that also made it complicated because we wanted this wind impression to be really match on and feel like the car is actually passing by. So that's why we also went back to skipping that interactivity, and now this wind machine to the right is only giving the wind effects if the cars are passing, so they're always passing in a way that it comes from the correct direction. The one on the left is giving you the general wind, so when no car is passing, the desert is still windy, and this machine is responsible just for that. And the third one was meant just to give you this extra strong wind when you're standing on this hoverboard that you saw before. I'll come back to that in a little bit. So this is how the final setup looked. You only see 2 of the wind machines. So it was very important to guide attention and to control where the user is looking, because we wanted to have the focus on the car, of course, but we also wanted the user to feel like they can do whatever they want. So in the beginning, we also had the idea of having the cars next to each other, but then we realized it takes away the focus from the e-tron, and we wanted to have the e-tron as a special. And by the way, you see the partially assembled Audi car there. We wanted the e-tron to be more in focus. So I'll show you that part. So as soon as you start them, they're actually choreographed around you that they always pass in the front left, but it still looks individual, so the wind machine can always give you the impression from the left. And now you could have watched after the other one or this one, but your attention is now focused by the way they're moving right to the spot. So it's very unlikely, and I think no one did it, to look the other way. And the car, of course, passes right between the other 2 cars. And that's how you control the attention and make the user look where you want them to look. It's also partially by not adding too much detail in the environment, because if you add detail everywhere, the people, you don't know where they're going to look. And so that's very important for this kind of experience. And this, at the last spot where the car is in front of you, you can just look at the car. You can take your time, and whenever you feel like it, keep the race going. So very important, of course, with all the movement and action, was balancing comfort and excitement. And this is very important. And when you step on this hoverboard, it was super important for us that you don't get sick. Let's fast forward a little bit. And we achieved that by making the hoverboard, and that's also partially why we picked the hoverboard, go forward and straight with a pretty constant speed, and it still feels super exciting and fast. And the car now is moving around you. You're not moving around the car, but the car is moving around you to give you a different perspective. That also makes it a lot easier for you not to get sick or feel queasy. And this is how a user would have seen it. And we considered putting an actual skateboard there, but it was just too much because you would very easily lose balance. We also used the balance board to be able to control the hoverboard, but again, standing on this platform and feeling like the wind is going around you felt very interactive. So we didn't actually need the real interaction of controlling the hoverboard going back and forth, especially because the whole showcase was only 2 minutes long, or 2 to 3 minutes. We also wanted to add another highlight, and this is where we said, oh, let's not overdo it. This is just a funny outtake again. And you don't expect that to happen, but you're in VR and you see this for the first time, you're like, what the heck is going on? But that's not actually the highlight we wanted to add, but jumping. And this really helped, on top of already being on this hoverboard and going along, the wind is blowing in your face, and you're already up with all your adrenaline, and then on top of everything, there's a jump coming up, and everyone is like looking at it, and some are a little scared. And we realized also that the most problematic in this area is actually people that are skaters, because skaters know what to do when they go up a ramp, so they want to counteract this movement, and then they fall backwards. So for that case, we had someone standing behind them. It only rarely happened, but that's an interesting thought, that the normal user who doesn't know what to do on a ramp doesn't fall. They're just standing there and thinking it's cool, but they're not falling. And the one that knows the situation has a lot more problems. Now let's look at a very brief look at a feedback survey that we did. We had a very mixed age range, you see here, and 30% female. We had mixed VR experience, still pretty low VR experience, and we had 5 of the 57 people say they felt unwell pretty strongly. And we also could talk to some of them afterwards, and it was mostly for the fear of heights. Some really broke a sweat just in the first seconds. Everyone had the option to get out of the experience right away. But interestingly enough, even those rated it very high. So I guess it wasn't too bad. It wasn't really making them sick. And I think I'm running out of time, but I'm almost done. And we got only positive feedbacks. We asked for one word to describe this experience, and we got crazy amounts of positive feedback. If you want to try this yourself right now and for the next weeks, it's definitely possible. Not here, but in Berlin at Audi City. So it was a lot of firsts for the users. First time VR with wind, first time ride on a hoverboard, first time watching e-tron Sportback in action, and that's pretty exciting for the people. Key learnings is just for you to look up later in the slide deck. And you should always think about, would this, what I do, be better in a different medium, or is it really using the strength of virtual reality? Make it really, truly user-centered, and that's the way you create real impact, make it more intense and emotional than other media, and engaging for the people. Thanks. I almost stayed in time.